Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. And that is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 through 7. And I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, where it is, as always, my passion and privilege to serve you. I am an adoptive mom. I'm a mom of 8. 5 of our kiddos came through adoption, including our youngest 2 sons, who are now, I can't believe I am saying this, 22 and 20. And when they were little, they were both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. So I get it. I get the challenges that come from raising kids with trauma histories, with prenatal exposure to substances. And I want this podcast to become an invaluable resource for you in your parenting journey. This is a safe place. I am here for you and just want to be your community, your encourager and cheerleader, and just have those conversations and offer that support that I know I didn't have many, many years ago when I began my journey. So I want you to have that. And that's what we're offering you. So lots of resources on our website, justicefororphansny.org. Justice for Orphans is the parent organization, the nonprofit that I founded 14 years ago. And we have just grown to not only offer you this podcast, but so many other resources as well. And you can check those out, all of our FASD trainings and support groups, my blog, all of those things are there, as well as the support group, the blog, the trainings, parent coaching, all the things. Also would love for you to learn more about my upcoming devotional book. Many of you that I saw at CAFO and at Replanted signed up to win a free signed copy. We chose 3 names at CAFO, and we still have to yet pull the 3 names for Replanted. We just had our annual fundraising gala, so life is a little bit of a blur, but we will be letting our winners know who they are. Our CAFO winners already were contacted, but we'll have to let our Replanted winners know, so stay tuned for that. But my devotional that I wrote is Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adoptive Moms. And I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm still hoping that we can release the book officially by the end of November. And when you're hearing this, it already is November. So keep that in your prayers. If you want to say a prayer for me, pray that we get that done. But that is on the way. And if you stay tuned to this podcast, to our social media, and to if you follow our newsletter that I send out kind of sort of once a month. Sometimes it's not every month, which I'll share about that in a few minutes. You'll know exactly when the book is available. So definitely by the end of the year, and hopefully by the end of November for sure. Be sure to follow our social media pages. So you want to follow the Adoption and Foster Care Journey on Facebook at the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, but we're also on Instagram as AFC_journey. And that's where you'll find those. And of course, myself, Sandra Flach, I'm on both of those platforms. You can follow me as well. And I love to connect with our listeners. You guys are my heroes, right? You're my people. And I love to connect. And I am already starting to fill up it's not full, but my 2026 speaking calendar. for in-person events has begun to start to get scheduled. So I will be at the Filled Retreat in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, January 30th through February 1st. And I understand that that event fills up quickly. So I'm not sure when you're listening to this if there are any spots left. So if you're interested, don't delay. Go to the website for the Filled Retreat. There's a link in the show notes on how you can get there. I'll also be in Birmingham, Alabama at the end of February. And at this very moment, I'm blank as to the name of the church that I will be at, but it's a large church in Birmingham. So hopefully I'll get those details. I'm not 100% sure if that's open to everybody or if it's just that group, but we'll let you know. And I will also be in March of 2026, I will be at Mobilize, Ohio. So stay tuned for those details. And if you're interested in having me come to your event, whether it's a conference, whether it's a foster adoptive parent retreat or a foster mom retreat, whatever it might be, reach out to me. I would love to join you. And I do travel and I do in person and I also do online. So make sure that you reach out if you're interested in having me come and speak and encourage your people today. So I also today we're going to talk about educating our children. And back in, let's see, what month is it right now? Back in August, I did a blog post about why education, why learning in school is so hard for our kids. It was kind of like a back to school blog post. And I promised in that post that I would follow it up with another blog about comparing the pros and cons of public school, private school, and homeschool, because especially with our kids with trauma histories and prenatal exposure to substances, school education, it's hard. It's not a one size fits all, and it's hard. And even recently, I've been hearing from so many parents who are struggling with very young children in school, 6-year-olds getting suspended, right, because of behaviors. So it is so hard. And unfortunately, I did not get to release that blog post about the pros and cons of educational choices in September. That is, I was in the middle of writing that blog post when my 3-year-old grandson passed away. So a lot of things got put on the back burner there, understandably so. And then travel picked up. I went to CAFO when I went to Replanted. And then before I knew it, October got away from me. So I'm really in the next couple of weeks that blog post will be released and I'll be sending out another newsletter. But this conversation, this topic keeps coming back to me. Parents keep reaching out to me on it. So I've decided to invite a guest on today who will be able to shed some light on this conversation. Today we have with us returning guest, adoptive mom, Shannon Iacobacci. Shannon supports parents of children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences by making the sciences of the brain-body connection simple and practical. Her work is grounded in research, observation, and a deep respect for the individuality of each child and family. She helps parents understand how their child's brain works so they can apply strategies that meet their unique needs and strengthen the parent-child connection along the way. This same personalized, compassionate approach also guides her work in schools. As a non-attorney special education consultant, Shannon partners with families to ensure their child's educational needs are truly being met. She provides parent coaching and support, reviews educational data and assessments, attends school meetings, and helps develop behavior support plans tailored to each child's brain and learning profile. Shannon specializes in supporting families and students living with brain-based differences and behavioral challenges related to trauma, FASD, ADHD, adoption, foster care, all of the things we're very familiar with. So please welcome to the show, Shannon Iacobacci. Hey, Shannon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to reconnect with you. You were on, gosh, quite some time ago. I feel like it's been forever. I mean, I see you on social media and different meetings, that we get on those Zoom calls, but just excited to have you back and excited for our listeners to get to know you. We've got a lot of new folks listening. So just how about we start with your family's adoption story, just so our listeners can get to know you before we dive into talking about all of the things school.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so gosh, our adoption story goes way back into the early 2000s, and we adopted our first two set of twins back in well, the adoption was finalized in 2004, but they were through foster care system. And so we went through that whole foster care journey and all of the things associated with that. And then fast forward multiple years, and then we also adopted two more younger ones back in 2015. Both those adoptions were finalized then, also through the foster care system, also associated with all the things. And it's interesting how the foster care system had changed from the early 2000s into like 2015, and some of the different things we had to go through in that journey. And so we fostered multiple children until we decided that, you know what, yes, adoption would be, a wonderful thing for our family again. And then we have these. So we have a total of 6 children, 4 of which are adopted through the foster care system. And that's kind of where we're at. So right now I have grown children in the early 20s, and I have got still younger ones at home. So yeah, it's quite the livelihood,
Yes.
So
Yes. Quite a livelihood, quite a lively house, I'm sure.
yes, for sure, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. And you're also parenting, like many of us, kids who were prenatally exposed to substances, to alcohol, right? Would you
Yes.
unpack a little bit about how you learned about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and how you became FASD educated and equipped for your own family, probably first and foremost, right?
Right. Yes, I'd be happy to. So, it's interesting that you asked that question because I did not find out about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder until the late 2000s. So I did not find out about it probably until around 2015 when we adopted our most recent children. We were seeing a lot of behaviors that were just like, what is this? I have no idea what is happening. Somebody help me, and this can't be the terrible twos. This can't be the threes. This is more than that. And well, a friend of mine mentioned FASD, and I was like, what is that? And seek out this person that happened to be in our area to find out, who happened to be a medical doctor who could, kind of walk me through what it is and if that's even a possibility. And I mean, we were not in the office very long at all, and it was highly confirmed based on history and all sorts of things, that yes, I had, a child with FASD. And then it what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of spiraled forward where we started to recognize, well, wait a minute, there's more than one child that, we started to see all this. So we actually went for a lot of like just desperation, as many of us are. I'm desperate for help. And it was mentioned to me by this medical doctor to seek out the Facets organization to see how to manage this. How can I parent this completely different neurodivergent child of ours? And it was in that training, the parent training there, that we realized, my husband and I looked at each other, we're like, oh my goodness, this fits the profile of more than one of our children. And so we dug deep into that. And then we had confirmed, diagnoses through various forms of researching and all the things and finding the right persons to do those assessments. And then, and we were on the journey, and we were just like, here we go. And we're going to change everything. And then I realized how many, like, as I dug deep, it just ignited a passion in me to like dig deep. Like, I'm one of those moms that are like, well, if I'm going to know this, I want to know all of it. Right. And so that led me to become Facets facilitator of the neurobehavioral model, go back and get my degree in psychology, just all the things, trauma informed, all the things that I'm trying, still working on educating myself to become a better help for those families that are just like mine, so to speak.
Yeah.
And probably just as, I mean, I remember being so desperate. I mean, just sobbing, and I don't know what to do. So yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of how I came about that. And so here I am, still working with my own family, making my mistakes and learning through them too, and helping others along the way. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. And similarly, same thing for me is as I began to learn about my own kids, they got diagnosed and, desperately looking for help, took all of the facets training, eventually became a facilitator as well. And then recognizing so many families are struggling. I already had this podcast, so I already had this platform where parents were tuning in. And the more I talked about it, the more I heard from our listeners that just from what I was saying, they recognized, oh my goodness, she just described my kiddo. Oh my goodness,
Exactly.
that's what we're dealing with. So, and just that passion to wanting to help families and support them and serve them and educate them and equip and encourage and all of the things. So I love what you're doing, through embracing the brain and love that part of your story. And for our listeners who might not, maybe they're newer listeners, what were some of those behaviors? Like now we know their symptoms, right? But
Oh,
and
100%.
what were some of those things that you were dealing with that you felt like, oh my gosh, what's going on here?
We had what I called, I kind of tagged them as major ragers, is what I called it, where there would be no rhyme or reason to, in my own mind, of why is this child freaking out? Why is this child being destructive? Why is this person? So there would be, like again, major ragers or tantrums, whatever anyone wants to coin the phrase of, where there was just fits of rage or destruction of property, harming others, unsafe behaviors, running into the street, running away at a very young age, where, I mean, it was just not safe. Behaviors that, gosh, honestly, I had a child at the age of 7 who opened their window on the second story of my home and walked out onto the roof because they were so upset. And oh my gosh, I'm on the roof trying to get my child safe, I mean, things like that. We were just like, what is happening? And it was really driving a wedge into my entire family,
Mm.
and it was just, we were all in just survival mode.
Yeah.
And you don't, and then there were no traditional approaches to help this, this child or our family. There was no, how I had brought up, was raised or, anything. And all these traditional parenting approaches were just like, well, number one, I'm not comfortable with that. So that's not an option, right? This child does have a traumatic background. Let's add that to the story. And then, so what do I do? And so those were some of the behaviors that I would see as just, and just no, transitioning, just why are we just have to go get in the car to go pick somebody up. And we're sitting here playing Barbies, but it's time. We need to go. And then just this whole thing would explode, or we'd be in the car and we're unbuckling our seatbelts and trying to escape out of the car while we're driving down the freeway. Like, these are things that just were my normal, but then realized this is not normal. Like, it's not common for a child to try to bust out the window when you're driving down the freeway because they got mad at their sister. Like, it's just not normal. So though I laugh now because, if that were to happen today, I probably wouldn't be laughing, but it's a desperate situation. So those are some of the things that we were seeing, and so
Yeah.
much more, and so much more, but
So
like,
much more. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Just the tip of the iceberg, probably, right?
Tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
right. Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you specialize in the brain and education when it comes to our kids who've experienced trauma,
Mhm.
attachment, prenatal substances, exposure, and FASD. So all of those things pertain to so many kids in foster care and adoption. So how do these challenges, these behaviors, the symptoms to trauma and FASD say, how do they impact the ability for our kids to learn? Because we hear from so many parents who school is just not working. So why is it so hard?
Because, okay, it is hard because children that have trauma or a brain that works differently are often misunderstood. present very well, right? They can present very well on the outside as, to coin the phrase, neurotypical, right? They're like everybody else in the world, but they are feeling extremely unsafe in a safe environment. So when children do not feel safe, they cannot learn. If you and I were in an unsafe environment, there's no way we are going to learn. We are going to be in survival mode. Okay. And so we add to that the FASD brain, or the brain that, is living with those that are living with FASD, maybe also resulting from trauma. We have a combination of factors where, since we present well on the outside, we are often misunderstood. Okay. So the expectations are high. Our brains aren't able to, function and learn in this environment because we don't feel safe. And so therefore, we're going to go into survival mode no matter what, right? An expectation that, say, if you, Sandra, are my teacher and you're expecting me to learn this, set of words, right? But I'm worried about everything around me. I'm not feeling safe because you think I can do this, but I really can't. And I'm really doing the very best I possibly can. I have a couple of options, right? My nervous system is going to be on overdrive, and I am either going to fight like heck to save myself in survival mode, or I'm going to completely shut down and be that quiet person that is, honestly, for me, that's the person, the child I even worry about even more so, because they fall through the cracks easily, right?
Yeah.
We shut down at school. We're quiet. We're so cute, right? I hear this in IEP means, oh, they're so wonderful. We don't see anything here at school because they're so wonderful. And, Susie just blah, 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 whatever it is that Susie does, but they don't see the inside. They don't see the trauma that's going on, then the fight or flight mode that's going on to survive, and that Susie has shut down and why we can't learn. So, or there can be the extreme where we clear the classroom, right? I can't do this anymore. I'm a survivor. I'm a fighter. I've been through so much. I'm tired of being misunderstood. My nervous system is on overdrive. And so I go to attack mode and I can't control what my body does. And
Mm.
therefore, that's the major rager that happens. And that's what's happening in school. Now, it may not be clearing the classroom. I mean, that could be extreme, could be an actual we don't know. All right. Every child is going to react differently,
Right.
but you can't learn in it when you don't feel safe.
Yeah, that's so true. And then, you know, our kids, gosh, I have so many thoughts are running through my mind because I was just thinking about myself. My family is going through a difficult season right now, and I just was at a couple different conferences where I was speaking, and I
Mhm.
was able to do that part of what I do. However, I didn't, and I typically, when I go to conferences, I'll sit in on some workshops because they're adoption, foster care, workshops, and they have, or conferences, and they have so many wonderful opportunities. But I found myself not going to any workshops this time and just sort of staying at I had a table of information because I felt like I can't take in any information right now. I'm going
Right.
through a thing. It's just hard for me to take in. And so
Mhm.
as an adult, I can make that choice. I'm not going to sit in a room where I'm being taught a bunch of things because my brain just can't do it right now. Right.
Right.
So I can take care of myself, right? We would call that self-care. But yet our kids who are going through trauma and struggles and all of these things and not feeling safe, they don't have that option. We want them to sit in a classroom, take in all kinds of information and behave, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And it doesn't work,
No,
and
it
that's
doesn't. I mean, and there's also that grief process that these kids are going through. They're grieving the fact that they're not like their peers. Interestingly enough, we are resilient. We are resilient, but we're also very aware. Okay. So even a child that is 5 and 6 years old, they know that and feel the difference between themselves and their peers. They feel it. So there's that on them as well. I can't
Mm,
perform as well as Johnny over there because Johnny knows all my sight words. I'm processing grief because my brain doesn't work like that. So now I'm processing my own grief. I mean, I'm sure you have, and some of our listeners have gone through some periods of grief. What is our brain like during that time, right? Our brain does not work. I can't take in information and learn anything when I'm processing grief. We have
yeah.
to impart that, like, hold space for that for our kids, in the learning environment. And that's not always an easy thing to do because there's an agenda and there's a process and there's all these expectations that, through no fault of their own are placed on our teachers and our admins to push these kids through to do these things, right? And
Right.
there's not a lot of space to hold space for, you know, trauma
Mm,
and grief and neurodivergence.
yeah. I call it grief fog, right?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
I've been walking through that myself, and it's like, given me a whole new compassion for our kids who, they've experienced loss and are grappling with grief, and but yeah, it's not not recognized, not validated, right? We're not letting them, we're not holding space, like you said. And I think that that is something that, being aware that we need to do that is so important. Um, Another thing, because I want to kind of dive into school a little bit more and just the different ways we educate our kids. But many of our kids have an IEP, an individual education plan, right? So
Yes.
it's important, or maybe why is it important to pursue those kinds of things, IEPs, 504s for our kids, whether no matter whether they're homeschooled or public school, what's the value of that?
The value of that is exactly what it's even intended for. It's individualized. Okay. So think of a classroom. A teacher is, required to teach the masses, right? Well,
Mhm.
for brains that work differently, br- learning comes differently, right? And
Mhm.
so adapting that or providing accommodations for a student that learns differently is very important because if you're teaching me in a way that I cannot learn, I am not going to learn.
Right.
I can't, if I'm a fish, what is it that if I'm a fish, I can't climb the tree, right? So if you're trying to tell me climb the tree, it's not going to work. You need to give me some water, right? I need to live in water. So give me what I need so that I can learn and I can show my strength of swimming in a bowl of water versus trying to climb a tree, right? And so that's why we look at IEPs and 504s is it's not a crutch. It's
Mm.
not giving them the best in any fashion. It's just bringing that student up to the same level as their same aged neurotypical peers in the classroom. So um, you everyone in the classroom is supposed to start at the same level, right? So we have everyone at the same level. Where say we're in second grade. Second grade, we're all at the same level. Well, a brain that works differently is not going to be at the same level necessarily. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, right? So the point of an IEP or a 504 is to bring that person in line with their same aged peers in that classroom. So they have the same access to the educational environment as everybody else. That's
Mm.
the whole point. So it's not to give them a greater advantage because that's not the intention. It's just to bring them on par with everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Level the playing field, so to speak.
Level the playing field. Give them what they need. Think about an access like how fair would it be for a student in a wheelchair not to be able to go into their classroom because they're in a wheelchair, there's no ramp there.
Right.
Right? So think of it like if you think about it that way, oh,
Mhm.
we're just providing the tools so that you can get into your classroom so you can hear the teacher talk, right?
Right.
Something like that. It's the same mindset in all sorts of 504 IEPs and bringing everyone to the same level playing field.
Yeah. Now, our family, when we adopted our kids, we were a big homeschooling family.
Mhm.
None of my biological kids ever attended public school.
Mhm.
And then so we, continued in that direction and homeschooled all of our kids that we had brought in through adoption. And our youngest son, when he came, was the one that got diagnosed with FAS first, and then his next older brother. And then it was a counselor who specializes in adoption and was really understood FASD, in my area beyond anybody else. And that's few and far between either also. But she had advised us, even though you're homeschooling, bring him into your public school, have him evaluated. He will qualify for an IEP, and you're going to want that because in New York State, I'm in New York State. There's a lot of reports that homeschooling parents have to do, right? So when I'm submitting my reports, having that IEP and having had him evaluated was, that helped so that when we showed, this kiddo might be 10, but their reading level is more like that of a kindergartner, right? There's a reason. It's not that we're not educating, it's that there is a disability going on here. There's a brain difference. It's documented. And he was, getting having the testing done and getting the IEP then opened the door for him to get services through our public school, even though we were homeschooling. I brought him in for OT speech, things like that, to the public school. So to speak a little bit to that, no matter what method of education parents choose for their kids, be it homeschool, private school, public school, that IEP is very important all throughout their education. And even after they're out of school, right?
Right. Okay. So we'll unpack that a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Um, okay. So, so yes, IEPs are helpful, but IEPs only go until grade 12. They do not transfer into adulthood. 504s do. Okay. So 504s can help with college accommodations and such things. IEPs end at the age of, not the age, but the grade 12. Once the student graduates, it's done. We tie a bow around it. Thank you very much. And the student has to, hopefully has learned how to self-advocate for what they need. A 504 carries on because it's a civil rights law. It's not so that's a civil rights document that goes into, and it takes them into the college and workforce and that type of thing. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, if you are homeschooling in your state, it's important not only check your state laws, of course, like you said, what's your reporting laws and things like that, but different states have different, and even different districts, like here in California.
Yes.
In my district, an IEP, because I have actually chosen to homeschool because of what my younger children need, they don't offer anything. If we homeschool, we are cut off. So
Oh,
it does not matter. I mean, you need to double check
yeah.
what those state laws and then your local and school district laws, because the you can't take away from what you're supposed to, federal law is supposed to, but you can add to it. But sometimes school districts, you have to look into their safeguards and policies and procedures and find out what are you going to provide my kid. Now some of them will do, like you said, you did OT and things like that. Okay. So yes, that can be done. In California, we also have like regional centers, which is very California specific. But different organizations can help provide those services. But sometimes, you have to pay for them, which makes it really difficult for struggling families. We can't afford to go pay for, specialized care, specialized OT, things like that. So sometimes that's when your insurance takes over. So there's all these different avenues, excuse me, that you may have to take in order to receive the services for your child. So it's very important to look at your state and your school districts to see what is required and what they're willing to do.
Yeah. So, and I totally agree with that because it definitely homeschooling laws vary by state, right?
Totally.
Every
Mhm.
state is different. And then even within that state, your school district, right? That's interpreted maybe differently through different school districts. And I had worked hard for many years, even though we homeschooled, to build a positive relationship with our school district. So when
Yes.
I approached them about having our youngest tested, he was 6, 7 at the time. They came back to me and said, "We want to be able to do this. We just have to make sure that legally we can." And see, I knew the homeschooling laws in my state because I had homeschooled for so long, and I was able to send them like a link to where the regulations are.
Mhm.
And then they actually got back to me and said, "We are thrilled that we are going to be able to do this for you." Now, I'm very aware of just like the next school district over, that would have never happened.
Right.
So
Right.
parents have to be aware and educate. And I always say, respectful, like be wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. You get more, with honey as opposed to vinegar, so to speak, rather than going in, with the gloves on. But, we built that relationship. Our son got the services, and then we reached a point where we did put him in public school, and
Mhm.
and he already had the IEP. We did that for a number of years, and then that began to unravel. primarily because the school, what we started understanding was, he was in a special education program and he had this IEP, but that doesn't mean that they understand his unique brain difference, right? And understanding how to best support him. Because I was getting comments like, well, he's very impulsive. I'm like, well, that's a primary symptom of FASD, right? So just, and then COVID happened and things really unraveled because of all the changes. Our district had a lot of really crazy changes when the kids could finally even go back to school. So really to avoid a mental health crisis, we pulled our youngest out again and finished his education through 12th grade with homeschooling him. So why, Shannon, why is like a public or private school environment harder for kids with brain differences, whether it's from trauma or FASD or whatever the brain difference is from? Why is it so hard, that environment?
I'm going to go back to because it's created for the masses. It's
Yeah.
not created, there's no, I mean, schools that do a universal design of learning have a better success rate for brains that work differently than those that don't. And because you're able to engage all different parts of the brain, and so you're able to engage different learners and learning styles. But through no fault of our teachers who come in with a bunch of compassion to love these kids and care for them and take care of them, they are being held to standards that are, I mean, back when I was in school, what that wasn't there, right? And they're teaching the masses and they have to teach in a certain way almost. And so for brains that work differently, again, if you're trying to teach me something that I don't have the ability to learn in that manner, how am I going to learn? We're not all learners of sitting and being told what to do, right? Some of us are visual. Even us, even if you don't have a brain-based difference, right? Think of it this way. If you don't have trauma, you don't have a brain-based difference. Everything's like, you're living in utopia. I'm sure none of us are, but let's pretend that we are, right? Your brain is still going to process differently than my brain. You may be an auditory learner by nature. You learn great. You listen to audiobooks, right? You listen to podcasts. Our listeners are listening to this. Maybe that's how we learn, right? But what if you're a visual learner, but you're
Mhm.
not being instructed visually? Then how am I supposed to learn? Right? How am I supposed to put two and two together? What if you're hands-on? Right?
Mhm.
Look at our classroom setting now. How much hands-on is there? How much kneading of dough, so to speak, just, and learning stuff with our hands is there. It's not, it's worksheets. That's where it becomes difficult because we're trying to fit learning styles all in one box and
Mhm.
it doesn't work. Like we
Yeah.
don't all fit in a box. And that's what's hard. And that goes same for behaviors.
Mhm.
I mean, if we're looking at the masses, we're looking at, think of it this way. I'm a teacher and I have 26 to 30 kids in my classroom. They outnumber me.
Mhm.
If they realized how much they outnumber me, right, what is going to ensue? Utter chaos. So what do
Mhm.
I have to insert immediately? I have to insert control and
Mhm.
compliance and rules and all the things, right? And
Right.
there's no room for impulsivity in my classroom because I've got 26 of you and I cannot handle 26 of you by myself, right? Being impulsive. So if we think about that, and of course there's safety and there's all these other things, but thinking of that alone, I mean, teachers are outnumbered
Yeah.
and that's hard. And you've got to teach to the masses. And so there's only sometimes one way to do it. And you're kind of herding cats. Like you got 7 hours, right? To try and figure out different creative ways to teach these kids. And, you've got learners of all different levels in your classroom, right?
Mhm.
You've got these twice exceptional geniuses, and then you have individuals that need some more care. I mean, twice exceptional geniuses still need extra care, right?
Mhm.
So do individuals that need to be brought up to the playing field. So, and then you have these in the middle that are getting by, and what happens with these in the middle, right? So, I mean, it's a juggling act for these instructors, quite honestly. And for the brains that work differently, there's no universal design of instruction to help them.
Mm.
That's kind of my opinion, so to speak, but that's kind of what I think, you know. I mean, think about what 100 years ago, what was the classroom like? What was it like back in the Little House on the Prairie days or whatever? Like they were outside, they were experiential learning. Yes, they had classroom time as well, but they were out there taking nests down from the tree and looking at, birds and how they, laid eggs and all the things, it was very experiential learning, and that we've lost that over the years.
And so many of our kids learn better that way.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I
Eat in
know.
the
Yeah,
dirt.
I mean, I'm a visual learner myself. I need, I remember homeschooling, and my kids would, like they were reading me a word problem they were struggling with in math, doing their math lesson, and I'd be like, oh, wait, I have to come over because I have to see the word problem, and I have to have a piece of paper, and walk them through it because I'm a visual learner, right?
Same.
And in public school, in the school settings, traditionally, it's a lot of that verbal, right? They're like the kids are expected to learn auditorily. I mean, there is a blackboard. I don't know. Do they still have blackboards in school? Like there's so much digital stuff now, right? Um,
It's more whiteboards and digital, yeah.
yeah,
But
that kind of thing. So I'm dating myself,
it's
but
okay.
but
I did too.
it's still, expecting them to sit and listen and learn that way. Not everybody learns that way. Um, and that's not even factoring in the brain difference from FASD or trauma or, the things that our kids, may be struggling with. So I find that, when I hear from parents, things begin to unravel because kids are not, it's not one size fits all. We can't keep trying to shove the round peg into the square hole, so to speak, because it's going to unravel. And so many times our parents come to me and they're asking about school because it's unraveling.
It is unraveling, yes. Because the expectations and the demands that are placed on these students are more than they are capable of doing,
Yeah.
and there comes a point where, I mean, think about our workplace environment. I mean, if our bosses were to tell us to do something we weren't able to do, what are we going to do? We hold space for that as adults, but we don't allow space for that for our kids.
Mm.
We expect compliance. We expect them to hold it together. We expect them to do all these things, and that's why it unravels.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond, invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So whether our children are in public school or private school or homeschool, maintaining, that IEP is so, so important, right? But let's talk about homeschooling for a minute because we just talked about the challenges our kids face, in like a public school, like a traditional school setting. And a lot of parents choose to homeschool to kind of make that better fit. Or some parents may be thinking, I don't think I could homeschool because, my kid gets all of these services and has an IEP. So how would that work? So let's just talk about, what would you say, Shannon, or maybe some of the pros and cons of homeschooling? Like maybe start with the pros.
Okay, absolutely. I'm glad you asked because I have chosen to do that actually with my younger. My older kids went through the public school system, but my younger kids, I am homeschooling. So, first, I'd like to say that homeschooling is the ultimate accommodation. And the
Yeah.
reason why I say that is because as parents, we know our kids the best. Okay. We know how we've learned how their brain works. The positive is I used to think I can't teach my kids. I can't teach my kids. Oh my gosh, it's just so hard, right? But then if I think back, I've been teaching my kids since day one and I didn't realize them. Did I help them learn how to walk? Did I encourage them to learn to walk, right? Did I encourage them to learn how to feed themselves? Did I encourage them to learn how to get dressed? Like, these are the things that I taught them, life skills that they were learning. What is one step more to teach them how to read or to teach them how to do some other things? The positives are a flexible schedule. You don't have to get up and rush out the door to get to a place, right, where the masses are. You can, if you're having a bad brain day, you can have a bad brain day and you can just take a break. You can take a break when you need it. You can, when your brain is working well, you can go all out and go for it, right? So you're not losing time. The benefits of homeschool also is you can create your timeline. The school system's designed to say you need to learn at a certain pace and do these things by a certain way, right? Which is why we sometimes see individuals falling behind, right? Well, we can determine that timeline to help them. Now, granted, there is research that shows a student should be reading by a certain time because of XYZ. But we get to determine how that looks for them, how they read. Are they a tactile learner? Do we need to, do we need to incorporate moving magnet tiles around to formulate our words? Do we need to, sit and read? You have more time to sit and read with your student, with your child. You can get creative and go on more field trips and have that experiential learning, right? You can, the big conversation is always socialization. And I just laugh because when you're in the classroom environment, they tell you, stop talking. You're not here to socialize. You're here to learn, right? You socialize for 15 minutes on the playground, right? Where you can socialize with a wide variety of individuals throughout your day, younger kids, older kids, adults. You learn how to live in that day to day because that's what it's going to look like when when you go out into the real world, right? Your experiential learning. Like I said, field trips, there's co-ops, there's so many different things are open. There's also the reality that my now 13-year-old is having. I mean, she's doing some stuff online and doing other things. And she says to me, Mom, do you know I have been getting all of my schoolwork done, like all of her schoolwork done in one day. I get it done in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. What do they do all day in school?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a very wise understanding. What are, and it's like, I know what they're doing in school. She, in her mind is thinking, what do they do all day? Well, there's a lot they do all day, but that concentrated learning, I mean, it's really, there's a lot of filling in the gaps, right? She's able to have the freedom to do other things throughout the day that interest her. She
Yeah.
can learn in ways that interest her. She can learn in what they can learn. They can take a topic. You can take one topic, say you're interested in, she at one point wanted to be a pediatric nurse. Okay, that's great. So we can break down every single thing around pediatric nursing. You can learn to read under pediatric nursing. You can learn the history. You can learn, like, there's just so many different things. You get the science behind it. You can learn mathematical, right? Like, all these things are there. So those are you can be creative, I think is what I'm trying to say. You can be creative and explore so many options in a homeschooled setting.
Yeah, and I've always loved the fact that when our kids have, based on their strengths and their interest, we can
Yes.
pursue those things. Like, I've had kids that are musical and they could spend more time playing their instrument and, we got them lessons, but they were able to, one of my boys played the drums, my older adult kids now, one played the drums, one played the guitar. The next door neighbor kid played another kind of guitar who that family was also homeschooled. And they would all like get together because, like you said, the amount of time it actually takes to cover the academics that are required, it doesn't really take as long. It doesn't take a whole day, right? And by the time, they've gotten in a couple hours of that, they've got the rest of the day to pursue those things that they're interested in. One
Right.
of my other kids was, loved animals. So she was doing a lot of her studies around horses or around dogs and things like that. So, that was one thing that we always loved about homeschooling. And then the other thing I know you mentioned about that socialization piece was I find that in a school setting, whether it's public or private, kids are grouped by age. right?
Uh-huh.
By grade level. And that's where they kind of stay all day long. But once they graduate from school, the rest of our lives, we're not grouped by age anymore, right? Most of my friends, I have to say, are probably older than me, right? And our kids, especially our kids with, say, FASD, tend to have that they're on a much younger timeline, right? Behavior,
Right.
what's the word? Thank you.
Developmental timeline.
Thank
It's
you.
okay.
I thought that was the word. They're on a much younger developmental timeline a lot of the times, and they don't really fit in with peer groups, right? So they either prefer to play with younger kids, or a couple of mine actually were more drawn toward older adults, safe older adults, right? And I found our kids were, they would during the day, they would not only be with each other, and all of their siblings are different ages, and they would be with me, but grandparents would stop by. They could go do activities with a grandparent, right? So they were exposed to people of all ages, and just it was such a better fit for several of our kiddos.
Yeah.
I love that
And then
part of it.
and you can also tailor, I just didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Go
But you
ahead.
can, like, I have a child whose attention span is literally the size like that of a flea.
Yep.
Okay. And so I can set the timer for 10 minutes of instruction or 15 minutes, and then we're done. And we're
Yeah.
going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and we can do it 15-minute increments all day long if we need
Yeah.
to. Right.
Right.
And because, but to sustain attention in an environment with so much happening is hard,
Yeah.
and an hour of instruction or practice is just too much. And then, like you said, they're grouped by age, right? So if you have a brain that works differently, a lot of times you don't, quote, fit in with the crowd. So you are either bullied or you're isolated or whatever. And that is not a good feeling for anybody, right?
Right.
And so, and yet you don't have the option of going to recess with the younger kids,
Right.
right? Because you're grouped by age. So you're going to go out with your classroom. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many benefits to being able to be at home.
Yeah. And if they're being bullied or isolated, that
Mhm.
kind of brings back that whole not feeling safe,
Uh-huh.
right? And how do you learn when you're not feeling safe, right?
It's a
So
cycle.
yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely a cycle, and you know, definitely such good points, for sure. And I think one of the other things, like you mentioned, the attention span of a flea. I have several fleas at my house. So and you know, and just being able to know as a parent, to be able to read, okay, I know this kiddo didn't sleep well last night.
Mhm.
So therefore, their brain isn't, going to be able to focus on learning, even more so this morning than, than other days, right? So we can adjust for that. Maybe today is just a reading day, or maybe today is watch a movie about World War II, or whatever it is we were studying, right? There's other things that we can do. And I had times where I tell this story a lot. One of my boys would, if he got birthday money and wanted to order something off of Amazon, and we ordered it, then that meant, like, every day, several times a day, we have to track it because we have to know when it's
Yeah.
coming. And
We got to
then
know when it's coming.
we got to know it's coming. And then the day it's coming, do you think there's any education going on that day? There's no learning going on, because their whole brain is focused on, when is the delivery driver coming with my package, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
on those days, it was like, let's play a board game, right? We would do other things, because sitting down to focus wasn't going to happen until the package arrived. And then when the package arrived, forget it, because then they're off with the package, right? So just being the parent that, we know our kids best. We know what's going on behind the scenes, right? We know they didn't sleep. We know maybe they don't feel well, or they have a visit coming up, right? There's things going on that would make them have a harder time focusing and being able to learn. And we can pivot and work with that. Whereas in a traditional school setting, it's one size fits all, and everybody has to just, right, follow the rules.
Right. And board games are great learning tools.
Oh, love it.
They're
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
So
We did
yeah.
a lot. We still do a lot. My youngest is 20, and we do a lot of board games still. It's a great way to build connection. It's
Yep.
still, opportunities for him to learn, and we
Yep.
have fun together. So I love that. And, so I think both of us probably are giving the impression to our listeners that there's a lot of pros, with homeschooling. And I do believe that there are, any cons that you can think of when it comes to our kids.
Oh, absolutely. So with the socialization piece, there is also there can be a feeling of isolation.
Yeah.
So there's an effort that has to be made because it's too easy to sit in the four walls of your home. Okay,
Yeah.
so there needs to be an effort made in that respect to create friendships and to foster friendships because socialization is important.
Mhm.
And so I would say that is, a con. A con is also sometimes as parents, it's hard to teach our kids. We
Yeah.
are tired from
Mhm.
dealing with everything else that sometimes we don't want to. And it's okay. We need to have space for that too. You
Yeah.
know, we need to provide space for ourselves, but sometimes that's that daunting. I am with you all day long, and
Mhm.
I don't want to be your teacher. And that's hard, and that can be hard until you get into that groove. Or, being the parent and the teacher, but also dealing with all the behaviors, dealing with, all of it. Sometimes we just don't want to. And that's the reality, right? Um, and the frustration as parents that we can have if our learner isn't learning, like
Mhm.
then it's easy to put it on ourselves that it's us.
Right.
And so we have to that's a challenge. The challenge can also be depending on what state you live in, what type of documentations do you have to have. There's that constant worry of reporting like what the proper way and all those things. Um, some other downsides to homeschooling would be sometimes filling that space, right? So
Mhm.
filling that space of time with activities and things to do so that so that they don't go to devices or things to look for entertainment. So it's now completely on us to fill that 8 hour a timeline. And as they get older, it's not as easy sometimes to fill that space and that gap. There's only so many times you can go to the trip to the aquarium before it's like, we don't want to go to the aquarium anymore, mom. Like, so there's that creativity and piquing those interests and figuring out different ways to do that. There's also finding the right co-op. Okay, if you decide that you want to take that co-op action, I know for us, there's been multiple times that we've tried different co-ops and they were not the right fit because
Yeah.
some co-ops really do mirror the public school environment for teaching, and that did not fit. I've had my kid run out of a classroom crying, I can't do this, I can't do this because they're not at the reading level as everybody else, So, or, some co-ops are more conservative and some are more liberal than others. And that depends on your worldview and what you want for your family. And so sometimes finding a co-op that fits your family can be really hard because if we have kids with brain-based differences and we have different co-op learning styles, or shall I say, morals, values, and beliefs,
Mhm.
or you have a child that's come from trauma, and then you're
Mhm.
in a co-op where no one understands that, you're
Right.
in just as bad of a place as you can be in a public school system.
Yeah.
So really, that could be a really difficult challenge in finding the right fit for that socialization or that extended experiential learning. So,
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I know co-ops were hard for our youngest too because they just didn't fit because of that, younger developmental timeline piece. They didn't
Mhm.
fit in with their peers. They didn't even fit in when it came to like church, like children's ministry or youth group, that kind of thing. Any setting where you have kids together and then we're all going to read, we'll go around the circle and we'll read,
Nope,
and our kids,
nope.
and at least mine, and maybe you had this, their reading level was much lower than what their age would say that it should be at, right? And so they didn't
Right.
fit in. It made them feel less than, and then they didn't like that feeling, so then they didn't want to go those places because who wants to feel, inferior to everybody around you? So,
Right.
yeah, I found that co-ops, weren't great. I did find that the behaviors, those things where I felt like I want them in school because then I get a break because I'm dealing with these behaviors all the time and the school's calling every day and I don't, what would I do with them at home? But I found that once we brought them home to homeschool, or my youngest who I brought home after being in school, some of those bigger behaviors and those problems we were dealing with at school actually decreased or diminished because I was able to, when I did choose to homeschool, meet their needs and meet them where they were at and provide the accommodations that I recognized they needed. So it decreased that stress that my kiddo was having, which led to some of the bigger behaviors, the secondary symptoms that we talk about, because he wasn't frustrated and upset and aggravated all day long, right? He was
Right.
feeling safer at home. He could settle down, he could focus, and he could learn better. So it was actually more enjoyable to be with him when we were homeschooling than when I was sending him out. And the kid I got back at the end of the school day was like, it was like a nightmare until bedtime, so to speak. So,
Right.
um, yeah.
And I was gonna say too, like if I had to do this with my kids too, because when we pulled them out of the public school system, we actually had to take a break. I had to provide space for them to disengage or decompress from all
Mhm.
of the trauma that was happening at school. And
Yeah.
that meant we worked on our relationship and our connection
Mm.
before we even touched on academics. And we
Yeah.
had to give ourselves a timeline of a break so that there was no pressure to perform. And that was the healthiest thing I could have done for them, for their
Yeah.
mental health, for their well-being, and all of the things was, you know what? You're home now. We're going to take a break. We're not going to do any of the academics or anything until a later time. And that was the best thing I could have done.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. So no matter what parents feel led to do, whether it's public school or private school or homeschool, if there's an IEP or a 504, you want to maintain that throughout. That's super important. And then Shannon, you offer support and resources for parents on your website, embracingthebrain.com. So what are some of the ways that you support parents when it comes to education, say?
Is in education, I provide advocacy and consulting for IEPs and 504s in education for students. The students are my students are my client, and I walk the family through the process, and I read through the reports and all of the assessments, and helping them determine what would be the best fit for their student, helping place them in the best environment, helping with the proper accommodations and goals. And helping the parents walk through the process. I like to coach basically I like to work myself out of a job is
Mhm.
basically what I like to do, is to kind of coach the parents through it. Here's how to advocate for your student, for your learner. Here's the pros and cons to doing it this way versus this way. Here are your choices based on what you were given, that type of thing, so that eventually they have the confidence to do it on their own, to be able
Mhm.
to advocate for their student. I sometimes attend IEP meetings with them, and I can help with the voice, always, hey, you can defer to me. I'm always here, and that type of thing. All sorts of the process. Again, we're helping them even with letters, writing letters to the school, helping them formulate that, and so to get the things that they need, and show them the process and what's available to their student, and asking questions and collaborating with the team.
Wow. So now you're in California. Do you serve just California families, or are you available for families across the country?
I do help mainly California families, but I do help across the United States. I do try to, I make sure that I get myself familiar with the law, the laws, because the laws in each state are going to be different.
Yeah.
IDEA law is federal law. That doesn't change, but state laws are different. And so to make sure, that does take a little extra time for research, but
Mhm.
I can still help. And I've helped people in Ohio, I've helped people in Texas, like all different places, but laws are different. And if I can't help, I am more than happy to refer you, to someone who can. That is maybe more of an expert in that area.
I love that. Embracingthebrain.com. And I know you do offer services like support, not just in the education space, but what's the other stuff that you do?
I walk families through basically the fastest neural behavioral model, and trauma informed approaches to helping work through behavioral symptoms that we see, and understanding how their child brains work, how they work differently, and how to provide the best accommodations to lessen those behaviors and to just create more harmony and peace in the home.
Mm.
And yeah, that's just some counseling and coaching and trainings that I do. And And I love it. And I also work with, not just how the brain works, but how the body and nervous system responds to various triggers and stressors.
Love that. So embracingthebrain.com. We'll make sure that we put a link in the show notes below for our listeners to be able to go to your website, see what you have to offer there, and reach out to you if they would like to do that. So whether our kids, are in school or at home for school, Shannon, what are some practical brain-based tools that parents or even teachers for that matter can use to support our kids so that they can learn best? Like just give us a few ideas of what would be good accommodations.
Ooh, that's such a tough one. And the reason why it's tough is because I'm cautious to say what good accommodations are because it's going to be different for every child.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard, even on teachers, because, what accommodations are good for student A versus student B. There are some generalized accommodations that seem to be standard, but I really try to pull away from standardized accommodations. Some of the things you might see is, preferential seating, as they'll say in an IEP. Well, okay, what does that look like? Because usually it's assumed it's closer to the teacher. But
Mhm.
what if closer to the teacher is not good? It could be maybe they need to be towards the back of the classroom
Mhm.
because of overwhelm or overstimulation. Maybe they need to be close proximity to a calm corner or, that type of thing. So standard accommodations, I really am very careful not to say. I would just say, look at the task at hand and how your child's brain or your student's brain is working and work within that and learn about that student and that child and know, um, you know, it- what helps them. Do they want the attention of saying, you know, Mrs. Flack, can you help me with this? Or do they want something silent to kind of like push a note? Are they
Mm.
able to push a note to the teacher to say, I need help?
Right.
Things like that. So really, really getting to know the student's
Mm.
strengths and
Yeah.
needs is the best. I can't give you a standard like accommodation because there's no one size fits
Well,
all.
and I love the fact that you're saying that because that is the truth, right? Every kid learns differently. Everybody's brain works differently, and really understanding, whether it's the parents first and foremost, of course, and then also teachers, understanding what are these kids, what are their like with FASD, we know there's primary symptoms, right?
Right.
And we know those primary symptoms. And when we know our kid and the symptoms that they present with, that's where we need to look at, well, my child has slower processing pace, so therefore they're going to need less verbal input. They're going to need their homework assignment given to them printed out as opposed to given verbally, right? So it really depends on each individual student and what their symptoms are and what their strengths are, and then build that around them. So I love the fact that it's true. We need to know our kids, and first and foremost, parents know we know our kids best. We know their
Mhm.
strengths and we know their challenges. And then making sure that the teachers, if they're in school, that teachers are educated accordingly and that they can understand our kids because it's really personalized, right? Based
Right.
on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. It's an individualized education plan.
Yes.
And that's where we need to do that and look at those data assessments, the results of the assessments that are given and provide what's fitting for that student.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely agree. So as we wrap up, Shannon, our parents, our listeners are primarily foster and adoptive parents, right? So would you leave us with some words of encouragement or advice as we navigate, raising our kids and our kids maybe really struggling at school? Just offer us some words of encouragement today.
I can say you can do this and you've got this. I would have wanted to hear those words, you've got this. It's okay. You know your child best. Um, and you are going to do what is best for them.
Mm.
And if you look at if you are the ultimate accommodation for your child. You
Mm.
really are. You are the ultimate accommodation. You are what your child needs most, and you know your child best. And sometimes just go with your gut. I mean,
Mm.
that's just, and you are their biggest supporter, and no one knows or loves your child more than you. So you got this.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you for sharing your story and your expertise and helping us be better equipped to advocate for our kids and make sure that their educational needs are met. Thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Same here. And I hope you were encouraged by my conversation with Shannon Iacobacci today. Be sure to check out her website, embracingthebrain.com. We put a link in the show notes, so you can learn more or maybe access even her expertise on this topic, on all things brain. And grateful that you tuned in for this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. Whether you listen weekly or occasionally, or this is your very first time, we are here every week. We drop a new episode every Monday to inspire, encourage, and equip you for your parenting journey. Be sure to check out our website where we have those resources from the FASD online and in-person workshops, parent coaching, and of course, our amazing Hope for the FASD Journey online support group. Make sure you check all of those out because those are phenomenal resources for you. You would go to our website, justicefororphans.ny.org, and you'll be able to go on there, and right on the homepage, you will see the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, and click on that button, and it will take you to all of the resources that I've been talking about. And there is a link in the show notes to make it super simple. As a mom of 2 kids with FAS, I spent many, many, many years trying to figure out what on earth was going on, became trauma informed. I fully embrace and still utilize those connected parenting strategies, TBRI, that works. I fully endorse those. But at the same time, when there's been prenatal exposure to alcohol, it's like next level hard this parenting journey can be. So we've got resources to help you with that specifically. And I will resume in January my online trainings. I offer a free 1-hour intro to FASD online every month. So there's not going to be one for November or December, but in January, I will resume offering a free one of those every month, as well as I typically offer the 3-hour workshop online using the Facets neurobehavioral model as well. So you'll want to stay tuned to this podcast, our social media, and our website to know what the dates are for any upcoming online trainings that I offer starting in January again. And then if you want something specific, even if it's online specific for your support group or your group of parents or professionals, reach out to me because I will schedule something specific just for your group. We can talk about that. And of course, love to always talk on FASD and use the Facets neurobehavioral model. So reach out and find out about that. And my blog is also on our website. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe to all of our socials, including our YouTube channel, if you would like to watch this podcast and see me having a conversation with the guest instead of just listening to the audio version. Maybe you are a visual learner, right? You can find it on the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel, where all of the video versions of this podcast are. So you can check that out. Share all of the above with your fellow foster and adoptive parents so they can be encouraged and equipped too. And again, I'm just so grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm grateful to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.